Hey there, and welcome to Get Career Curious. Ever wondered what it's really like to be a lawyer? Not just the TV version, but the real day-to-day work of someone who's handled everything from criminal prosecutions to complex legal cases in the finance world? Well, you're in luck, because today I'm talking with Joanna Collias. Joanna's career has taken her from Chicago's courtrooms as a prosecutor to senior legal counsel at the Northern Trust Company. She's tackled financial regulations, worked with government agencies, and built a career that demonstrates just how valuable a law degree is. If you've ever thought about going into law, or you're just curious about what a career in law really looks like, this is the episode for you. I'm your host, Marita McCahill. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Hi, Marita.
I'm really glad you're here today. So, can you tell me, and this is kind of funny because I actually, for all the years I've known you, I've never asked you this question, but when did you decide on a career in law?
I always kind of thought, like, in the back of my mind that I might go into law. I have some relatives that are lawyers and they're older than me, so that was kind of like a path that I saw them do. And then when I was graduating from undergrad, I wasn't necessarily thinking I'm going to law school. I took some time off and I worked at the Board of Trade for a little bit, and then I actually clerked for a judge while I was thinking like law was going to be the path. And then that sort of solidified that decision. And so I would say it was after undergrad, just thinking about it and thinking, okay, this is a good path for me.
And what did you study in undergrad?
I was an English major.
So you studied English and then graduating. How did you get into your internship with the Board of Trade in Chicago?
Oh, I actually worked for my cousin. He was a trader in the 10-year note pit. It was back when people were actually on the floor and there was all like physical trading happening, not on the
Yeah.
computers. So I was a runner for him. He needed somebody to fill in, and I happened to be newly graduated. So that's how I got into that.
How long did you do it for?
About 8 months, probably.
And how did you figure out it wasn't for you?
Oh my
Like,
gosh, it was just a really different environment. I never really saw myself doing that, I think, long term, just because it was kind of hectic and crazy. And I mean, thinking back on it, I was like, oh, if I would have stuck it out, it might have been interesting to sort of see where that went. But at the time, I think it was a little overwhelming, and I just didn't see myself doing that long term.
and then how did you get the clerkship with a judge?
Well, actually, again, it was another family member, and there was an opening at the Cook County Court, Circuit Court, in the Law Division downtown at the Daily Center in Chicago. And at the time, I was thinking law was probably the going to be the path for me, so that helps me as well.
So
And it
how
was a
long
good
did
way
you do that?
for about 6 to 8 months also.
So what kind of drew you to the field of law?
I think it was maybe just I was thinking more. I wanted to have another degree, just become more educated. I felt like with an English degree, it was difficult to sort of see a career path in English other than like getting a master's or some sort of a graduate degree. And law seemed like a natural sort of progression from having with an English major. I wasn't really necessarily sure what I wanted to do, like as far as what type of lawyer I wanted to be when I went to law school. But you don't really need to know that. You kind of figure it out when you're in law school. You're exposed to a lot of different types of law or practices. There's also lots of options just as far as like classes that you could be interested in, like that aren't necessarily requirements, but that are just to expose you to different types of legal work that is out there.
And so during law school, did you play around with different career paths within law?
Yeah, I did. I mean, there were some like classes that I took that I was like, oh, this could be an interesting path. And there was my trial advocacy class. That's also a requirement. But that was where practitioners come in and teach you how to try a case and what is required when you're trying a case and how to put on a case and how to argue a case in court. And I just thought that was awesome. Like, I just was like, again, fascinated by these practitioners, and they were mostly prosecutors that came in. And one of them was a female prosecutor that really inspired me. And I was like, this is something I totally thought I could see myself doing. So once I took that class, I started to explore internships along those lines. And then I got an internship at the Attorney General's office here in Chicago. And so the last year and a half of law school, I was an intern at the Attorney General's office in the criminal division.
Internships all along, you've done several that kind of guide you to selecting your career. So do you feel those are pretty crucial to have as a young person?
Yes, for sure. Like, you learn how to think like a lawyer in law school, but you don't learn how to be a lawyer until you're actually working. So it's good to have internships to figure out, is this the kind of work I want to do? You learn how to actually do the work, right? So I definitely would recommend finding internships to figure out like what your passion is, what you are good at, or what you just feel like you could really dig your teeth into at some point after graduation, and go with that.
So when
I would
you
definitely.
graduated law school, you were an assistant prosecutor. Did you take that on full time for a while?
I did, yes. So again, internships are important because they could also lead to jobs, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to be in the mix every day in a courtroom, learning how to be a prosecutor and try cases. And so I wanted to be in the Cook County State's Attorney's office. And so my connections at the AG's office then had other people that they were had connections with at the state's attorney's office with recommendations, as well as getting an interview with the, because that's those interviews and those jobs at the Cook County State's Attorney's office are hard to come by just because they're pretty in demand.
So
Um,
you started there after law school,
yes, right. As
and then
as an assistant Cook County State's attorney, correct.
so how long were
Uh,
you there? What did you learn?
yeah, about 5 years. It was a great place to learn how to be a trial attorney. I started out in the appeals division, writing appeals, arguing appeals in front of the appellate court. It's hard to get that experience at such a young age as a lawyer, unless you're in public, like working for a public entity, right? Like it's either a prosecutor's office or some sort of more in the public sector versus the private sector,
Mhm.
if you want to get that kind of experience as a young attorney. So I started in the appeals division, and then I went to the criminal division and tried misdemeanors. I did about 20 jury trials as a misdemeanor assistant. I then went to the felony review, which is a division in the prosecutor's office that goes out and works with the police officers and helps investigate cases. We would interview witnesses and defendants and take statements from defendants and decide whether or not there was enough evidence to file cases anywhere from felony retail thefts through murder cases.
Yeah. That sounds
After
like pretty amazing experience for
Yeah,
someone right
it
out of law
was for
school.
sure, for sure. I also was in the sex crimes division for about 18 months, which was a more specialized division where we would work with police officers on cases involving sexual exploitation, any internet crimes against children, and sex crimes against children. We would come in and help work those cases up and work those up through indictment. As a prosecutor, you just get a lot of hands-on experience really young, which is if you want that, I would recommend exploring that route after law school.
Yeah. And you did it for how long? Did you say like 5 years?
5 years. Yes, right.
I could see how that would get really tough. I mean, those were some
Yeah.
heavy areas to work in. And so, what did you move into next?
So 5 years in, I kind of felt like, again, you do see a lot of things that normal people, you don't see every day. And as a prosecutor, seeing those day in and day out. And after a while, you just kind of get jaded. And I just felt like it was time for me to move on to maybe a different area, a different type of law. And I ended up going to a big firm, and I did commercial litigation in a bigger firm, which was much different than being in the prosecutor's office. So.
And along the way, how many females were in your role? Is it a
Yeah.
male dominated field?
Yeah.
Oh,
I would say in the prosecutor's office, I never really felt like it was. It was pretty even. You had female supervisors. I had seen female supervisors. I had male supervisors. But once I went to a firm, that definitely that environment is much different.
But I'm sure your early on career helped shape who you are and give you a lot of confidence going into corporate law then.
For sure. Yes. Yeah. And I did have some like the initial partner that brought me over to the first firm that I worked at was he was great. So when
Yeah.
you have male allies that are supporting you and believe in you, and actually I've had several of those, to be
Yeah.
honest, that have sort of brought me along. I mean, that's really important to find people like that, whether they're male or female, to be honest,
Right. Yeah.
that believe in you and that are take the time to teach you the ropes. Because going from being a prosecutor to going to working at a firm, it's like a completely different world. I went from going to the courtroom and having the courtroom as my office, basically, or
Yeah.
just whether it was when I was in a courtroom or working with the police, that was the police departments really that were my office at that. You're just traveling
Yeah.
around a lot. You're on your feet versus being in a firm where you're in an office, sitting at a desk and writing a lot more. It was a little bit of an adjustment to make
Yeah.
that move for sure. And to be honest, I would say a few months into it at the big firm that my first firm that I was at, I did not think that I would make it. I thought,
Yeah.
my goodness, I just don't think I can do this. It's just a lot different than what I was used to. I was dealing with a lot, the personalities that I was working with were a lot different.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, my brother-in-law gave me some advice and he's like, you should stick it out for a year. Stay there a year and then make a decision. Don't leave after a couple of months. You just never know. And that was a really good piece. I'm glad that I listened because he was right.
Yeah, and I would agree. My first job out of college, I was pretty miserable. It's hard after being so active to sit in an office behind a desk inside all day, and it's hard. But a lot of jobs require that. So I
Yes.
stayed a year too, and things really evolved and changed after a year. I think partly you changed, but then also I think doors open and you can shift a little bit so in your career. So yeah, that's really good advice. So what now? I mean, you're still in corporate law, correct?
I feel like my career is much different than maybe other lawyers. My career has taken various paths. It sort of has wound its way around. So I started out as a prosecutor, went to a big firm. I was in litigation. I did litigation for a long time. I mean, for probably about 15 years, commercial litigation. They were general business litigation at first, and then I sort of got into a niche and it was all like energy related litigation, commodities trading litigation. When the administration turned over in 2016, my practice depended on government investigations, government prosecutions in commodities trading, basically.
Okay.
That's what a lot of where my clients were coming from. And what happened was that work sort of dried up
Okay.
because there were no longer investigations happening. That administration took more of a hands-off view of regulation and how, the markets were going to be regulated. So my work ended up drying up and my whole practice group sort of just dissipated. Everybody sort of went their separate ways, even though we were at a big national law firm. And so I decided it was time to switch gears and I started focusing more on in-house positions. I was thinking more of litigation positions in-house. And then it turned out that I'm now doing more contract work. I'm an in-house attorney at a bank now, and I help support our asset servicing group, and I help negotiate agreements for new clients that are coming into the bank. I had to learn this from scratch, and I've been at my current job for 5.5 years now. So if I could say anything about the law, what I love about it is that you can always learn a new area no matter how far into your career you are.
Yeah.
And I think like people think like I have to like I'm pigeonholed now. I can only do this
Right.
type of work. This is all I've been doing. But really being a lawyer is all about solving problems and analyzing problems and those skills still apply no matter what type of law you do. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to have such a variety of work that I've been able to do, especially the job that I'm at now. I don't do litigation at all. I'm helping negotiate agreements. And I thought at the time, I never had to negotiate agreements before. So I was like brand new out of law school, having to learn how to negotiate an agreement. But again, I had colleagues and managers that believed in me, and now I love the job that I'm at right now, and it's something that I'm continuing to learn. I'm learning more about how the bank works and how banking law works, and I love being able to support the clients that I'm supporting, and just love where I'm at right now.
That's so good
Yeah.
to hear. That is something I want listeners to be able to understand is that you can pick a career path, and sometimes just having the education of a broad law degree has allowed you to reinvent yourself and what type of lawyer you are multiple times throughout your career.
Yeah, agreed, for sure.
What are some of the favorite parts of being a lawyer?
When I think back on it, I feel like it's the people that I've, like my coworkers and the people that I've helped. I think as a prosecutor, I feel like I was doing good work and making a difference in people's lives. And that at the time, I felt, that was something I really was important to me. It's still
Right.
important to me, but I was happy to be able to do that. But also, and I made like some of my best friends in the prosecutor's office. Everybody's starting out together.
Yeah.
It's a very much a team mentality, and as we were both student athletes, and
Yeah.
so what I loved about being in the prosecutor's office is it feels like you're on a team again. And trying a case is very much the competition, and it's all about preparing. Right, as a prosecutor, I liked being able to sort of transfer the mindset that I learned as a student athlete into my career. And actually, law is like that across the board. Throughout all the jobs that I've had in my career, the team that you're working with is like the most important and really makes or breaks your job and your time. And I've been lucky that I've always been able to find people like my team, right? So if I could give another piece of advice to your listeners out there, think about the people that you're going to be working with, and because it's really important that you get along with them, that they're people who are going to support you and give you confidence and help you grow as a lawyer and as a person.
Thinking back when you were younger and now where you are in your career, are there any misconceptions about law? Maybe you thought were there when you were younger and they've been dispelled, or things that actually kind of are true about law careers that you would want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think coming out of law school, you think, or at least I thought, I got to pick the career that I'm going to be in forever. I thought,
Yeah.
I want to be a trial attorney. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my career. I'm going to stay in the state's attorney's office. I think one thing I would say is be open to changes in your career. It's good if it happens. I think it
Right,
helps you
right.
grow as a lawyer, and you expand your horizons, and you become being able to draw from different experiences or different types
Yeah.
of law is can only help you along the way. So I would say don't pigeonhole yourself. Be open to trying to go in a different pathway, even 10 years into your career. You can do it.
With the lawyers you've worked with in your network, is it pretty common for people to shift in and out of different types of law, or do most people kind of stay in a specific area?
Most people stay in the area that they're
Really?
comfortable in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially where I am now, people don't leave. Like my manager has been there for her whole career
Oh,
at
that's
the
great.
bank.
I mean, it's great, but I can see wanting to try different types of law. So,
If you find the right place and it's the right thing for you, that's a good thing too. Being in a career,
right.
being someplace the same place for 30, 40 years that's okay too if it's the right fit for you. When you start to feel like, this isn't really going the way I thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I started a job, I always thought this is going to be it, right? Like I never thought like, I didn't have the
Yeah.
mindset of I'm only going to be here for 5 years or whatever.
Right.
I
Right.
always thought this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my career. And it just, things change and your interests change and your viewpoint changes. I've always thought I didn't want to limit myself. I wanted to keep my options open. I wanted to see what else I wanted to challenge. I wasn't afraid of a challenge either.
Yeah.
So
And what advice do you give to kids in college besides getting an internship? I mean, are there local organizations they should volunteer at? What do you recommend?
I would say maybe take some classes that are geared towards that career in college to see, like, is this something I'm interested in?
What kind of
Or, I
classes would
mean,
those be? Like
yeah.
poli sci?
Well,
What?
there's poli sci or business law classes. There's business law classes
Okay.
out there. Yeah, poli sci writing classes. You write a lot as a lawyer. Being an English major, that was really helpful because you do have to write and you have to analyze. I learned how to analyze text or write about analyzing text. So I think that was helpful. But I would also say volunteering for sure. Volunteer for your local
Yeah.
whether it's local government or state government or federal government. Try to get some volunteer work to see how does our government work? How does the law work? I feel so much more empowered knowing about how our legal system works and what the history of our legal system is.
If given the choice to kind of go back and do another career, do you think you'd stay in law or you think you'd pick something else?
I think I picked the right one. I think I would pick law again as well. I didn't really appreciate my education until I got to law school, and that was where I really figured out how to study and really figured out why it's important, right, to study and
Right.
why it's important, why education is important, to be honest. I just felt like, oh, college is something you do, and I had a
Yeah.
lot going on anyway. But once I went to law school and learned how to study and learned how to think like a lawyer, and I feel like it was definitely the right decision for me. I
And
don't
so,
regret it.
yeah, I'm so glad. It's nice when you don't regret what you've chosen as your career.
Yeah.
Um, what are some strengths you see in people when you're hiring? Like, are there certain qualities or attributes that you feel like are suitable to a good lawyer?
Any type of personality, to be honest, you can find your spot in the law. People think like a lawyer needs to be argumentative or they need to have a big personality because that's what you see on TV. You see like Law and Order but then there's lawyers that are not trying cases. There's lawyers that are writing contracts like me or negotiating agreements and working with clients and working with not-for-profits. I wouldn't say there's one type of personality that fits a lawyer. What I would say is I think like certain personality traits are things that I look for if I were interviewing somebody as to be a coworker would be honesty, would be somebody who's not afraid to like admit that they made a mistake.
Hmm.
Um, Mistakes are going to happen. You have to be able to admit to them, right? Like because they
Okay.
only if you make a mistake and don't and just like cover it up, it only gets bigger. Like as a lawyer, your reputation is everything. So you want to be known as somebody who's honest and admits their mistakes. I also think like a hard worker. I'm looking for hardworking colleagues, not somebody who's going to slough off the work to other people. So
Yeah.
really like people who are team players, right?
Right.
Honest, honest, hardworking team players.
So, what are the hours like? I know they're probably different in different roles. Does it get more manageable as you get further along in your career, or is that a misnomer?
I would say it depends on the type of work you're doing. As a prosecutor, it's pretty much 9 to 5. If you're in a courtroom, it's 9 to 5, except when you're prepping for a big trial, then you're there late, and work home. Um, or in the felony review, you have to have somebody on 24 hours a day. So I would work like when you're working the night shift, and those were 12-hour shifts. So, I
Okay.
mean, work six to
All right.
six at night till 6 in the morning. You'd have like an overnight shift, but it all felt pretty manageable. You're coming out of law school, you kind of feel like anything is possible, right? Like
Okay.
I just always felt like I could put as much time as was needed. If you're at a firm, the hours are tough. I mean, I'm just being honest. Like they are, you're
Yeah.
expected. The firm only gets paid when you're working, and there's billable hours, and you have to keep track of your hours. And it's usually about 2,000 hours a year. I think that comes out to be about 60 hours a week just because you can't bill. You're not going to bill all the time that you're actually at the office. If you're at a firm, at a big commercial law firm, the hours can be pretty tough. And it used to be like once you made partner, it's not as strenuous, but I think it's not that way anymore. Partners are now also expected to bill. So it's a lot more pressure to get clients, to make sure you're getting billable hours, to make sure you're working on good cases that are going to give you those hours. You could be working till late at night. You could be working on the weekend. Now that I'm in-house, I'm there 8:30 to 5 are my official hours, sometimes going early. It's much more flexible. It's not like my team is more flexible. It's much more manageable as an in-house attorney than it would be at a firm, for sure.
But aren't those jobs kind of hard to get? My experience with lawyers is that you do have to work elsewhere to kind of build a reputation. You have to work for client-facing firms where you are under billable hours and working those hard hours at the start. And then a lot of lawyers then try to move into in-house where they have more of a career life balance.
I would agree with that. Yeah. And again, going to the job I'm at now, it was a lot of networking. Another piece of advice I would say is don't lose your network. Like the people that you meet sometimes, even in college, to be honest, could help you later on with a job. They might know somebody, at a company or at a firm that you want to go to, and it could at least be like, hey, can you give this person my resume? Keep that network close because you never know when they can help you later on.
That's great advice. So, to wrap up, do you have any other advice? And this doesn't have to be law related. What advice do you give to young people just kind of at the start of that, what should I do with my life question?
Well, I would say try to expose yourself to a lot of different experiences, classes that might help you figure out like what you want to do. And then secondly, I would say don't be afraid to work hard and be the person that's going to stay late, especially when you're starting off in your career. Stay late, work hard. Don't say no to work. Be the person that's going to step up and say, I can do this, and then figure it out. If you feel like it's something that is something might not be as comfortable with, ask questions, right? So what I would say is, like, especially in your 20s, be the person that's going to put the time in, be known as the hard worker, be known as the person your colleagues can go to with a problem, and that you're not going to say no, and that you're going to, jump in and try to help as the best that you can.
And I would add to that, go to the office. If there's an office environment, put yourself in that bucket because, I mean, like you've said, at the end of the day, your favorite part of your job was the people you've worked with along the way. And I would say that's true with my career. Like, I love the people, and you don't get to build those relationships near as strongly if they're all virtual. So, yay. Well, I so enjoyed having you. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
doing
having
this.
me.
Thank you for joining us today. Our goal is to help listeners discover meaningful careers that bring them joy and purpose. If you have a friend who is considering becoming a lawyer and might benefit from today's discussion with Joanna, please share this episode with them. Want even more career insights? Subscribe to this podcast and join our community at getcareercurious.com for exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access of this podcast that you won't find anywhere else. Thank you again for joining me, Marita McCahill, in this episode of Get Career Curious. I'll see you next time.